Animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Safari Live PM Drive. My name is Patrick. Joining me behind the camera today is Owen, and we are coming to you live from the Juma Game Reserve here on the western outskirts of the Greater Kruger National Park. This drive is 100% live and 100% interactive, so if you do have any questions or comments or queries or anything along the way, please do send them in using the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or the YouTube chat stream. So I'm sure a lot of at least our regular viewers are very aware of what happened last night / early this morning with Hosanna having his kill stolen by the Inkahuma Pride. So there was a little bit of a hunt which also involved a hyena, and then Hosanna got the impala, took it up to a tree, hoisted it, and then Inkahumas came and chased him out of the tree and managed to take the kill for themselves. So what a very, very hectic scene. And well, one person who was part of that scene was obviously Hosanna, and Grant has managed to catch up with him this afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Juma this afternoon. My name is Grant, and I'm on drive with Senzo this afternoon, and we have found Hosanna, thanks to an earlier update from the dam cam. I believe he popped in for a drink and headed off in the direction of the wall, and from there he didn't go very far because he's just sort of found a nice shady spot under the shade of some tamboti trees. Now, just after we arrived, he was completely flat out, having a nice afternoon nap, and something picked up his attention, and there's two kudus that just wandered into the scene. Obviously, he is watching them, but you never know. I mean, you might be surprised. Kudus tend to be slightly on the large side in terms of prey for leopards. Now, Hosanna's not a little boy anymore, so maybe if that female kudu does something a little bit silly, then he might have a chance. But it is a sort of towards the top end of the spectrum of sizes for leopards. So the problem at the moment, obviously, as you can see between him and that kudu, is a massive, very open and very sunny patch, which he would struggle to cross undetected. So he's relying on his brilliant camouflage at the moment, and judging by the kudu's behavior, she may have just seen some movement. I think he's also struggling to contain his curiosity, but she's not sure. So if the kudu had definitely seen him, she would not sort of glance away too casually. Mrs. Anna, that could be part of his plan. Shame, yeah, he did have a bit of a rough night, having all of his hard work taken away from him, and could definitely be looking for a replacement meal. This is quite ambitious, like I said earlier, but you never know. I've been surprised many, many times watching these animals interact. But like I said, now at this stage there is a bit of a gap between him and her, and she seems to be following the male kudu, who's headed off in the direction that they came from. Let's see if he follows them. Animals like leopards, predators in general, don't really want to put too much effort into chasing or trying to catch something that they know the chances are very slim. So let's just see what he does while she walks off. You can see how he's lifting his head up and his ears are pricked up, and he's listening quite carefully. Yeah, so the size of a kudu is generally too large for leopards. if you had to sort of have a set of rules for them. Things do happen though. I mean, I've seen leopards with young kudu kills. This female is probably not fully grown, but she's just run off now. But yeah, so kudu is definitely towards the larger end of the spectrum in terms of prey species for leopards. If it was a female leopard, she'd have absolutely no chance. A female kudu probably weighs in the region of sort of 120 kilograms or so, depending on her size and her age. But it would be a little bit big for a female leopard, who usually comes in at around 35 or 40 kilos. So Hosana, I haven't weighed him myself, but he's a pretty chunky chap. A very big head, strong neck. Sort of, if I had to guess, he'd probably be in the region of sort of 65 or 70 kilos. Leopards have been known to lift carcasses equal to their own body weight up a tree, which would mean that they're lifting a big yawn and a stretch. Lovely. Shame. Look at his empty belly. Doesn't look like he had much to eat off of his meal last night before the Nkuhumas arrived on scene. Look at that beautiful coat. Cool. I think he's just going to probably settle into that little hollow there. He seems to like resting up in hollows and relax. And let's just see what else comes down here. I might spend a bit of time in the shade of these lovely Tamboti trees, and you guys can head over to Jamie, who I believe is at the scene of a crime on the bushwalk this afternoon.
We are at the scene of the crime, so to speak, but we're actually at the scene of many crimes. A very good afternoon to you all. My name is Jamie, and this afternoon, Sebastian is on camera with me, and we're out on foot at one of Hosana's favorite haunts. And I said it's the scene of many crimes. I actually suspect that there have been more kills viewed on the dam camera than there have been viewed from our vehicles when it comes to Hosana. But I was just imagining what it must be like to be an impala. Some nice, clean-ish water over here, there's some water over there, but when they're coming down from quarantine in the dark, this is the route that they have to walk, and they have to go around to this part of the dam. And from where I'm standing, and I stand a little bit taller, or where I was standing, I stand a little bit taller than an impala, you can't see at all down towards his favorite hidey hole, which is just below here, down in this perfect little gully. And it's basically, he spends so much time here that there's almost a Hosana-sized, that's very pretty, Hosana-sized hole. Egyptian goose, maybe? Just thinking aloud? Suspect it might be something like that. It's very pretty red when you look at it this way. We don't really, because we see the Egyptian geese so often, we don't really stop to appreciate their colors. But this is actually very pretty indeed. So this Hosana-sized hole is just perfect for him. It's clearly exactly right, and he feels safe and secure when he lies down here. Probably all sorts of ticks and things. I'm going to leave this feather because it's... Oh, I don't know how I'm going to carry it throughout the rest of this. This is... as well. We're not the only ones investigating the water holes on this
Situation unfolding here. There's an Egyptian goose down here that I'm just trying to get a good position so we can have a look at. It's positioning itself very awkwardly at the moment and kind of running away from us whenever we get a good shot. But I'll describe what happened in a second as soon as I get a good spot here. Where have you gone? I have no idea where this thing has gone. Oh, there it is. Oh, it's hiding in this little... Just... So apparently Jamie just showed an Egyptian goose feather. Well, there's many feathers around here, so we can see it just in that little crevice down there, hiding away. Now, I think what has happened is that this African fish eagle that we can see up in this dead tree, just over here, when we first arrived on the scene, it was down in the water and it looks like it was going at something. And then, well, underneath it was this Egyptian goose. Now, it almost seems as if the eagle was trying to hunt the goose because the goose was completely submerged in mud, so much so that it took us a couple of minutes to actually see that it was there and submerged. So it was completely under the mud, and there is feathers absolutely everywhere here. So there obviously was some form of struggle. Now, I don't know whether the Egyptian goose did actually hurt itself or somehow get itself submerged in the mud, or whether it was actual attack from the African fish eagle. Either way, it was a very interesting scene to show up on. So if we have a look at the outskirts of we're up at Buffalo's Hook Dam, by the way. If we have a look at the outskirts, we can see there's a lot of feathers all around from this struggle. And wow, as Jamie said, there was a crime scene at the dam this morning. Well, there's also a crime scene right here, right now. Definitely not one involving lions or leopards, but still, an attack of the birds. How interesting. Yeah, it is all happening at the dams at the moment, Emma, but this one now obviously quite shaken up by the incident. It was walking fine. It managed to get out of the water okay. No, so everyone is asking whether there is any visible injuries on the goose. Not that I could see. It's very covered in mud. It was almost completely covered when it first came out. It swam around a bit, which did kind of get it off the line. Oh, here we go. Right on cue. So we can see how muddy it still is. All over the head there. But its body after swimming got pretty cleaned off. But there doesn't seem to be any visible injuries, and as we can see, moving around quite fine. Obviously quite shaken up. It looked very disorientated the way it was swimming. But carrying on with the new hairdo, face of makeup. Yes, I do. I do always get myself into a crime scene. We like to think that it's a lot of skill out here, but sometimes it is just luck, just showing up at the right place at the right time. And I seem to be doing that a fair bit, especially up in the Mara as well. I was very blessed with some of the things that I just managed to come across at the right time. But actually, no, I could have come across this perhaps a few minutes earlier, and really I would have been able to piece together exactly what has happened. But I mean, given the evidence we have, that seems to be what has occurred, that there was a bit of an attack from the fish eagle. I was just stoked to have seen a fish eagle up so close. So I'm just going to get us so we can see Scuba Steve and Snorkel Sam. I believe now that he has undergone his gender change. Well, not gender change, we just figured that he was a male rather than a female, and we can really see there the size similarity between the two. It is a bit hard to gauge when they are submerged, but we have one fully out there. Hippos, of course, being famous for their blood sweat, which is a compound that they secrete. It acts as a sunscreen and helps to protect them from parasites, and actually made them part of the circus when, back in the day when that stuff was kind of not so frowned upon. And someone else who could be a part of the circus, because he is a little bit of a clown sometimes, is Hosanna. Let's go and catch back up with him and Grant.
Okay, so still sitting with Hosanna. Differently to the Egyptian goose that everyone's just seen that's covered in mud, Hosanna's doing an incredibly good job of keeping himself clean. Now, we've been watching him grooming for probably the last 5 minutes or so, and he's gone through his chest and his legs, and he just picked up the tip of his tail in his mouth, and he's just gently holding it between his paws there and giving it a proper wipe down. That's one thing that always amazes me, how immaculately clean leopards always seem to be. Unlike myself, no matter how hard I try, if I had to wear a white shirt in the bush, it would be completely messy. But somehow that white on their chest and on their belly is always spotless. Well, absolutely not spotless, but very clean and white. This is the first time I've spent any quality time with Hosana, and I can understand why everybody is so fond of him. Now, I haven't ever really come across an ugly leopard, but he is a particularly handsome chap. I was looking at photos of him earlier on, and his you'll notice with male leopards, they often have what's referred to as a necklace of spots around their neck, on their upper chest area, and Hosana seems to have two very distinct necklaces, which does make him look quite handsome. And those spots on his lower legs and on his belly are big, solid black, in contrast with that white, which is really, really nice. So Rena, I have had a pretty close look at him with my binoculars to see if there are any injuries on him from his encounter last night. Obviously we didn't catch up with him this morning, so it's been nice of him to be lying right out in the open, giving us an opportunity to have a nice close look at him, and he looks to be in perfect condition. He had one of his legs up earlier as he was cleaning in the more difficult to reach areas of his body, and I had a look at his paws, and everything seems to be in order. Definitely no sign of any blood, but that would have been cleaned off, whether it was his or from his meal last night. Like I said, leopards are incredibly good at cleaning. But no, when he sat up earlier and gave those kudus a nice close watch, he moved and turned and twisted exactly as a leopard should. So, they're pretty smart animals, and those kinds of encounters probably happen a lot more often than even we know, and we do get to see them fairly regularly. And so they generally get quite good at avoiding the sharp ends of lions and hyenas. And he would usually climb right up into the top of the tree to get away from the lion's nasty teeth and claws. But I think while we spend some time with Hosana, we're going to send you back to Pat to see what he's up to at the dam.
Well, it's great to see Hosana still hanging around and that he wasn't injured or didn't sustain anything too hectic during last night's little scuffle or this morning's little scuffle. But I would have thought, it wouldn't surprise me if that did give him a bit of a fright, but, well, lucky for us, he did come straight back, the brave boy. But now here I am, still with these hippos, and they're playing a lot nicer than last time. Last time I was here with these two, one turned around and proceeded to fling their dung directly in the face of the other, which didn't look too pleasant. But, basking very nicely. It hasn't been too hot today, about 24 degrees Celsius, about 75, 76 degrees Fahrenheit. It's still warm enough for these two to be basking away all day. I remember one of the first ever Safari Live hippopotamus-related things I ever saw was that video, which I'm sure a lot of you are all aware of James Hendry trying to draw the hippopotamus and absolutely losing the plot It's still one of my favourite Safari Live moments, and it brings a tear to your eye to watch. Absolutely hilarious. It is an absolute classic. But, I mean, the point he was trying to make is a good one in the video, that all of the sensory organs of the hippopotamus itself are on the same plane. So when it is standing in the water, like we see right now, all of the nose, the mouth, the eyes and the ears are able to be above water and functioning correctly and sensing what they need to sense, whether it be a sight or smell or hearing. Looks like we have our Impala out here to my right, about to come on down, perhaps for a drink, if the hippopotamus allow. Delto saying that he always finds hippos so relaxing. Well, so do I. I love spending time with them. They do, I mean, you wouldn't really guess from what you see when you see a hippo that they can get so aggressive and so defensive. But it is something that we are wary of and something we always need to keep an eye on, because as bad as they can get, they can also, well, bad isn't the word for it, they're just doing what they do of defending their territory. But as aggressive as they can get, they also do need to be handled with respect, and always need to keep an eye on them. So here are those Impala. Looks like a bachelor herd here. Bachelor herd being a group of males, generally the non-dominant ones, as they haven't been able to take over a harem of their own. Although rutting season is pretty much closed down now, we are definitely not hearing as much sound from the Impala as when I first came here a couple of weeks ago. There was a lot of violence and gurgling when I first came here. It was quite the scene. Quite the audible scene. Perhaps that's the right word for it. Kathleen, where do hippos go when it all dries up? Well, they will try and relocate for water sources. So although they are completely dependent on water, they can move away from water for a short period of time. And so we'll use that to try and relocate. But they can also utilize mud as well. So you can also observe hippos even in a slight puddle or even just a super muddy patch. But unfortunately, if they can't do either of that, their skin will start to crack up, they will dehydrate, and what's going on here? How cool is that? I thought he was going to do a complete barrel roll then. How cool. I'm not sure what the purpose of that was, perhaps to give the other a nudge. And all back to normal. Tuti, no, the hippos do not have a rutting season like Impala. I'm not sure what the season is here in Juma, but in the Mara, it was like a lot of animals actually in the Mara, where there was no real set breeding season, but there was a peak before the rains did come. And I'm assuming it would be similar down here in Juma, especially because there is that seasonal rain and we get so much water in summer. Well, not so much water compared to some regions, but definitely a lot more than in the winter. Alrighty, well, I'm going to move on from these hippos, and while I do that, let's send you to Jamie on bushwalk, who is contemplating a tree, whatever that means.
It's actually one of my favourite spots on Juma, just because there's a huge game trail that runs between Galago Pan and the Voyatella Dam, where the camera is. And it's sort of dotted with these huge jackalberry trees, and the animals love it here. And I can see why. There's something so beautiful about these jackalberry trees with their thick, dark foliage and their dark bark. It's also quite a substantial termite mound. I didn't realize until I started climbing it just how steep it actually was. But the thing about jackalberry trees is that they're easy to climb, not just for leopards, but for lions as well. Everyone always talks about the fact that leopards are such good climbers. Look, lions can climb. And we've seen it in the Mara. Most of you have seen it in the Mara. And they often steal leopard kills from them. Now, I suspect that this happens more often than we know. It's only just because the dam camera happened to be there that we knew that that scene unfolded at all. We could have read it from the tracks, probably. Although there was such a confusion this morning that I'm not even necessarily sure that we could have. I could go roly-poly down this hill, actually, full of Scuba Steve. I think that Hosanna probably encounters lions possibly weekly, possibly even more frequently, depending upon where he is. Now, I think that it's something that he's pretty familiar with, if not comfortable with. Probably comfortable would not be the right turn of phrase. But he's going to choose a jackalberry. He runs the risk of a lion climbing up it. I sometimes wonder, if that's not why we often find leopard kills in peltiforums, which are the weeping wattles, because they're almost always a little bit too uncomfortable for the lions to climb, although then they can just climb up and grab it anyway. Just pull the tree over. I do think it is something that happens quite regularly. But moving on to the lions, because we've seen Hosanna, he's okay. I think he's learnt a few things since his encounter with the Avoca male. Herbie was out all day today, for which we have to say a very big thank you, tracking the lions. He could only find where one lioness went, and then one lioness went towards Sydney's dam. Now, we don't know for certain, but... Wait, no, let's rephrase that. We do know for certain that one of the Nkuhumas has cubs, because Ali has sent us a message to say, look, there are clear suckle marks, and I believe that some of you could see them on the dam cam last night. So one of the females has cubs. Tristan and I were having a conversation in the car on the way home today about whether or not those cubs could be on Juma or not, and where they might be. Typically when a lioness has got cubs, she's going to the same place, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, twice a day, every day, sometimes 3 times a day. And we haven't noticed that. We haven't seen the tracks. But as Tristan said, we might have missed it with a number of male tracks wandering around. Ah, he's up there. I see you, Herbie. Yes. We're just whistling at each other, Oh, didn't hear me. It's an old whistle that we used to whistle at each other. Right, so, where are the Nkuhuma cubs? Where is the one place that the Nkuhumas have been moving constantly? And now that I think about it, the answer is just behind Sydney's dam in Buffelshoek Manuleti, on that boundary. That's where they've been going, crossing in, out of Simbambili. Or they're in Ilgauri. Or they're on Juma, and we've missed something, which is a possibility. Might be why the Avocas have been with us the entire time. Right, so while we concentrate on finding Herbie, who himself is desperate to find where the other 2 lionesses went, Grant beat us to our mission this afternoon and found Hosanna for us.
Yes, very relaxed indeed, Jamie. He has obviously gotten over his most recent lion encounter and is sleeping it off nicely in the shade here. We've got a cool breeze that just rolled in, and the Tamboti trees still providing him a nice spot to rest for now. He's finished his bathing routine, feeling like he's clean enough, and he's found a not so soft pillow just on the edge of that dried up mud wallow there, and he's just tucked in there ever so neatly. As we drove in here as well, it was just saying to Senzo that if he were lying on these dried, fallen leaves of the tambuti trees, he might be very difficult to see. As I ended that sentence, we saw him lying slightly sort of more towards us from where he is now, but right in the middle of a nice open sandy patch, so he wasn't too difficult to spot. But I don't even want to know how many times I've driven right past a sleeping leopard in a nice patch of grass and had absolutely no idea about it. Let alone the amount of times you spend walking and tracking to try and find them, and surprise you by jumping out of the grass not too far in front of you. What leopards tend to do a lot of the time is very much rely, or they're very confident of their camouflage, and they expect that you'll just walk right past them, which also happens. And sometimes if you do get a little bit too close and haven't seen them, then they'll just jump up and move off. But yeah, he's nice and out in the open there for us to have a good look at him. Let's have a bit of a closer look. Just grab my binoculars. Absolutely, Peter. You and myself, and I'm sure many other people, are very happy that Hosana got away unscathed. You do go very attached to these individual animals. Being up in areas like the Sabi Sands, we get very much a part of their lives and become quite involved in their sort of day-to-day encounters and what's going to happen and what has just happened. So yeah, but very glad he's okay and we can continue to enjoy his presence. In the meantime, while we enjoy watching this beautiful sleeping cat, I'll send you back to Pat, who's spending some quality time with some hippos.
Well, we have a little bit of male displays here in both senses of the word, with both species. So we have these Impala here who were doing a little bit of jousting. Here we go. We've got some going on there. And whilst that is all going on, there is also hippo spraying his poo in the foreground, which is, well, they're both displays of dominance in males, the fighting in the Impala, and it's also something hippopotamus will do to mark their territory or show their dominance over another male, is they'll position themselves kind of head to bum and spray their poop. But it doesn't look like anything serious in these Impala. Obviously, as I said, it is a bachelor herd and not a harem. There's no females here, so it's not a serious fight for females. And well, especially now that rutting season is finished, I think it's just a little bit of not so much a play fight, but just figuring out the dominance hierarchy. Although it has definitely settled down at the moment, it still is a thing and it is still something that is occurring. So anyway, my original plans, I never actually told you about my plans this afternoon. I was looking for the Nkuhumas, but I have heard they have crossed north over to Buffelshoek. So I did just come, Buffelshoek, the property that is north of where we are right now. Where we are is at Buffelshoek Dam, which is actually off the Buffelshoek property. But I think I might still head down to where they were last seen and just have a little bit of a poke around and see what I can come up with. So looks like these Impala were going to come drink, but it doesn't look like that anymore. So off we go. Whoop. There is that Egyptian goose, still looking very muddy. I'll just stop here so we can have another look into it. No, Emma, I won't go driving us into Buffelshoek. I've been marshmallowed one too many times during my time here, although it's never happened in Djuma, and I hope it never does happen. But we can still see this Egyptian goose, which is neither a goose nor a duck. They are classed in shell duck. And yes, this goose also got marshmallowed. That's a very good point, Emma. Very good point. marshmallowed worse than me. It got its whole body stuck in the mud. At least with me, it was only my lower half. All right, continuing on, providing this goose does get out of the road. I hope you recover. The fish eagle is still up in the tree. Perhaps that's what's made it so nervous and coming away from the dam. So the goose will start to preen itself, and as it goes more and more into the water, it will probably start to wash a lot of that mud off. So although it is muddy like that for now, it won't be like that for good. But as for its face, I'm not sure how it's going to go about that. I'm sure it'll just eventually come off with the water and perhaps a little bit of rubbing and cleaning. I'm really hoping I can at least get a visual on the Incahumas this afternoon, because as everyone is very curious about the cubs and how many are lactating. And well, that duck was quite dirty, but one boy who keeps himself very clean is our star Hosanna. Let's go back over to him.
Very clean indeed. Yeah, it'll be interesting to try and see where the Nkuhumas have wandered off to. They definitely did give us the runaround this morning. We had tracks going in all different directions last night, and it would be nice to know what they've done with themselves. And so far, no sign of Tundi this afternoon. There was some alarm calling Franklin's just north of camp earlier on this afternoon, and so maybe she's hanging around towards Gallagher Pan, maybe in those drainage lines somewhere. We were hoping that she might pop in and pay Hosanna a visit. It's always nice to see some encounters, especially when between different individuals of leopards. But for the meantime, he's been pretty undisturbed since the kudus left. We were visited by a yellow-billed hornbill, and that's pretty much it. Would a leopard drop its kill to escape from lions? You know what I mean? I don't think they would intentionally do that. You know, if the leopard was trying to escape from lions in a tree, and the kill was in the tree, in certain situations like last night, they can climb some of the larger trees with heavier branches. In that scenario, I think the leopard's plan would probably be to just both try and stay away from the lions and at the same time try and keep his kill. I don't think intentionally giving it away, although that would give them a good distraction. I think the first plan on his mind is to try and get further away from the lions, which would usually be right up into the thin branches of the trees. You'd be amazed the size of the small branches that a leopard needs to sit in. And I was just looking up at this knobthorn behind Hosanna. Now, I don't know if you could have a guess roughly how high you would get into that tree. My guess would be sort of up into that top left corner of bunch of branches in the top left of the screen there. That's it. I have seen leopards right up into thin branches like that before. They're incredibly good at negotiating, breaking branches and things as well. But there would be no chance of a lion getting that high up into a tree. When you do sit and watch leopards that have hoisted a kill, you'll often find hyenas and things gathering around the bottom of the tree and hoping for scraps to fall down. I think it is quite a nice sort of system for the hyenas to benefit from something like that, but I definitely don't think it's intentional, because if you had to watch the leopard's sort of facial expression as the bits and pieces of his hard-earned kill are falling to the hyenas, he's kind of disappointed for a few seconds. The bits and pieces that usually fall out of the trees are like the end bits of bone where there's no meat or any sort of nutritional value to them, that they usually drop down. And of course the hyenas just crunch all of that up and eat it. But yeah, just napping away. Every now and then he'll flick his ear to chase some flies away. It's a nice thing about this winter, this winter weather. Yeah, bones delicious. I'm not sure. Maybe if you're a hyena, they don't seem to be too picky. So I think bones and things like that would be delicious for them. But yeah, I was just going to say that the nice thing about these wintry afternoons is the warm sun and the cool breeze. You never really get too hot, especially with a nice spot like Hosanna's. You see him flickers. You can actually see the flies that are buzzing around him there. I don't know if anyone else has ever been in the position of trying to nap while a bunch of flies are busy interrupting you every few seconds, but leopards seem to have that down to a fine art. But while we continue to sit with Hosanna, we'll see if he does anything more than sleep off his afternoon. We'll send you back to Jamie on her bushwalk.
Absolutely correct in that this time of year the temperature is so pleasant, and for those of us who know we're walking almost, in fact we're walking pretty much every afternoon, it is even more pleasant because you don't feel the cold right up until the point that you finish your walk. And instead of the sort of blistering 40-degree heat, it's actually really quite lovely to walk at this time of year. Plus, at the same time, if you need to, you can cover ground more quickly because you can see into the vegetation. Not too quickly when the cameraman's filming, because otherwise they fall over and get cross. And we don't walk too fast, despite Herbie's desperate need to find these other two lionesses, something that we all share or all have in common. So we can't quite work out what's happened. And what we figured, because we've gone and we've checked all the way in a loop around to the north, we figured that they must have gone south, and that the one lioness must have split, most likely the one with cubs, because that just makes sense. We know one's got suckle marks, the other two have gone back south towards the pride, or we think they've gone back south towards the pride. That's what we're hoping anyway. So Pat's going to assist us in the search for the Nkuhumas. If he finds any tracks, we'll call him in. We've been to check the old hyena den on Mvubu Road. For those of you that remember the old hyena den there, it was a mansion. A beautiful, beautiful den. And eventually, if I remember correctly, and my memory could be faulty here, but I don't think it is. If I remember correctly, the hyenas eventually moved out of Djuma as a result of the fact that the Nkuhumas were denning so close to their den. It was the old lioness who had her den here. The middle set of cubs. She denned them in this side. So, the Nkuhumas come back and den on Djuma. Oh, but I want to see a lion cub. When last did I see a lion cub? A little lion cub. Don't know. I think that the last time I saw a small cub under the age of a couple of months was in the Mara. I can't remember. It was sometime in the Mara. I saw the Olololos when they were very little. Yes, the Olololos. Couldn't remember what they were called for a second. And the marsh breakaways. And they're so cute. That's not, of course, to say that they're not still lovely as they grow up, as we've had to learn with Hosanna as he's got older. Our love just changes and grows.
Very adorable indeed, Jamie. And he has just got up and done a little bit of moving. Look at that shade, that dappled shade on his coat there. Really stands out how well his camouflage works. I wonder what he's going to do here. He might just go and have a look around, see if anything is coming down towards the water, or just change his position. Look at that stance of the muscles in the back of his neck and his shoulders. That long tail. It's always good to pay attention to that tail of theirs. It can be quite descriptive of their sort of their attention, if you can put it that way. If they do see something interesting, that tail is incredibly dexterous. Look at that. You see that little wag that he did there? It's either just saying, maybe there's nothing here. When that tail starts jiggling from side to side, he's usually, they have picked up on something interesting. We've just lost him. He looks like he's coming back to the left there. We might have to do a little bit of maneuvering here, just to see if we can keep up with him. It's better to go around this way here. Lawama, that's a nice question actually, and where the leopards don't sleep on the ground because it's too dangerous for them. Now, it definitely does put them sort of in the position that something might sneak up on them. Now, they do sometimes fall into a deeper sleep where you might sort of be able to get a little bit too close to them without them realizing. Otherwise, they usually pick up on sounds that would indicate movement in the area. Now, what you might notice is that they usually won't go and sleep right out in the middle of a massive open area, but rather somewhere close to a big tree. Sorry, a little bit bumpy. Somewhere close to a big tree where they could quickly dash up if a lion or a hyena had to surprise them. But saying that, sleeping in trees is done from time to time, as long as they can find a nice wide enough branch to spread out on. It would usually be more comfortable lying on the ground for them. So you do more often find them sleeping on the ground, but within reach of the safety of a nice big tree. Now let's just see. There's quite a lot of little winding drainage lines here, which obviously is perfect leopard habitat. Now, we were just parked over there earlier, and he's slipped over to the left-hand side of this ridge. So let's see if Wendy can squeeze us through here. It's a wonderful little vehicle, so I'm sure she'll have no problem doing that. He is very sneaky, as are most leopards. The ease with which they disappear is never, is always surprising. Okay, so while I do a bit of negotiating here, just watch your heads. I'm going to send you back to Pat, who is busy tracking the nkuhumas.
Good luck there, Grant. Hopefully you can get through it. I was put through the exact same situation last night, and well, it can be quite the tricky one to negotiate. So as I said, the nkuhumas were seen up sort of moving northwest, and they have been seen over in Buffelshoek, but I'm just going to come down that direction anyway. There are fresh tracks going that way, but I believe they would have been from earlier when they were seen moving this direction. But you just never know, they may have crossed back over, something that's got their attention, or perhaps just coming back for some water. There could be a number of reasons for them to cross back over. And it's something we do see in cats. Sometimes you'll be following a set of tracks one direction, and then you'll find some going at the complete other side. But definitely tracks all over the road for lions. I haven't seen any small ones though. No signs of any cubs, but definitely some bigger lions in the mix. And it looks like a couple of lioness as well. So poor Hasana finally gets himself an impala and has it stolen literally right from underneath his nose. And well, hopefully tonight he can have another go and get something, and hopefully if these lions are away, Well, it seems that way. Everyone is wondering whether the Nkuhumas have split up. Now, I obviously myself haven't seen them, but it does seem that way from what I've heard and what these tracks are doing as well. Each set of tracks of lions I've come across have kind of only been 2 to 3 lions each, and they were kind of haphazardly along this road, which also tells me that they may have been split up a little bit. And well, especially if they do have cubs, and the cubs may still be at a den site somewhere, that's another reason that they could be split up. So whilst I don't know exactly for sure, it does seem to be that way. That was something we would see quite a lot up in the Mara with the bigger prides of lions, such as the Olololos and the river pride. Is it? Well, it looks like snakes been across the road there. Sorry, there was just some tracks for a snake crossing the road. So I just had a quick look, but snakes can be quite elusive down here. Bigger prides, they were always split up, and even prides like the Owinos, especially when Butternut had her cubs, we would always see them split up. And whilst I try and find these lions, I'll send you back over to Jamie, who also loves to reminisce about the Olololos and the Owinos.
I have been reminiscing about the Olololos and Owinos. I mean, I remember when all of those... I'm just listening to a bearded woodpecker at the same time. And I remember when the Olololos had their first set of cubs during our first few weeks in the Maasai Mara. It was absolutely stunning. Tiny little bundles in the drain. That really steep lugger in Kenya, big river system that drained down from the marsh. The Owinos, I remember our little pale lioness. So yes, there's lots to reminisce about. Some happy, some sad, but life carries on. And I'm hoping that when, you know, in the light of the oldest lioness's death from the Nkuhuma Pride, I'm hoping that some new little cub sightings might give us a little bit of renewed joy, I guess. We've done a big circle all the way around the backside of the dam, or not the backside, the northwestern side of the dam. And now we're heading round to the east and to the south. Now, Bright Knight wants to know if Amber Eyes has cubs. She, if I'm not mistaken, it is the ridge-nosed lioness that looks as though she's got suckle marks, from what Ali said. And it looks as though the one-eyed lioness and another lioness have got, not one-eyed, but the purple-eyed lioness, are lactating, or at least have milk. Pouches of milk. Oh, there's Patrick. We're about to walk into him. No, we're not. We're going to walk into Grant, I think. What was I saying? Oh, I don't know if it was Amber Eyes. We're not sure yet. We'll try and get some clarity. Obviously, as soon as we see them. Amber has not had much success when it comes to raising cubs. I think that we've actually counted 5 failed attempts that we know of. And almost always the cubs have not made it quite past their first few months of life. Shame, those last little ones I didn't even get to see. Actually, none of them I got to see, come to think of it. So we really, really are all rooting for Amber Eyes. Just hasn't worked out in her favour. Hopefully this time she can synchronize in with the rest of the pride, have her cubs at the same time as the other lionesses. Then, of course, she's got the allo-suckling potential of that fairly substantial pride now. When you think about it, the 4 sub-adults are reaching maturity. Some have reached maturity. So that's 4 adult lionesses plus the now 4 original adults. So a lot of allo-suckling potential. Herbie's got us so well trained. As soon as he stops, don't step on the track, don't step on the track. And we've looped all the way around. And back down here. I hope Amber has cubs, and I hope they're successful. Right, I just saw Grant drive past. I assume that means that we're not about to walk straight into a Hosanna, judging by the speed he was driving at. Let's go and find out whether or not he has any ideas as to where Hosanna's gone and if he'd like some help.
Quite possibly, Jamie. I did see you coming down in this direction, but he is walking away from them, fortunately. But we haven't relocated him yet, but we're just coming down back into the drainage line, hopefully just a little bit further ahead in the direction that he was walking in. There's the other. Okay, so that's cool. Senzo said he just saw some impalas. I do see them as well, just up ahead there. I just want to update the other vehicles that they don't chase them, or you don't want to interfere with Hosanna trying to get another meal, but stations there are some impalas just further up ahead along the drainage line from where Hosanna is. Okay, let's just... Okay, seems like he may have seen them running across the drainage. I wonder if I should just... Let me just stop here for a second and just see. You can see the impalas there off to our left, just glancing up in the direction of where Hosanna is coming from. If he has seen them, he would definitely have taken cover. Now, one thing he has to his advantage in the direction that he's coming from is that the sun is behind him. So even as I try and look in this direction to see if we can see anything, the sun is shining straight in my eyes. So that would be an advantage for him over the position of the impalas at the moment. So I think we're in a pretty good position at the moment to just sit and see what happens. Now, we can usually judge from the impala's reactions as well, just what might be happening with the leopard. If they do see him, then we might hear an alarm call, but otherwise you can see them paying attention up towards his direction, so there's a good chance that he's still up there as well. So everybody is switched off now, and we'll just spend a little bit of time sitting, listening. Senzo's checking the wind here, which is also an important thing, and I think it is in his favor as well, which means it's blowing from the impalas towards where Hosanna is. You can see that there's a young male impala there, probably in the region of 2 years old, would be the ideal size late lunch for him. Sorry, Daniel, I just heard the beginning of your question about hunting an impala. It is, like I said, an ideal size animal for Hosanna to hunt. Yes, Daniel, very handsome impala indeed. They are also very sleek and good-looking animals. I don't know if that contributes to the leopard's preference of them, but they do tend to enjoy the impala, probably more because of their size. Now he's just gone back down into the drainage, which is more ideal for Hosanna in this situation. It's unless that impala is just dashed out the other side of the drainage line. Now I'll just give it a few seconds and then we'll edge forward just along this track a little bit, and just see if we can see what those impalas have done. I haven't heard any sound, so they definitely haven't seen him. Otherwise we would have heard their classic snorting alarm call, sort of a sound that's made out of their nostrils, which they haven't done. So can you see anything from up there, Senzo? Otherwise I think maybe let's just edge forward down this track a little bit and see if we can see anything. The impala's alarm call is very unique in terms of the difference between the other calls that they make. So the only other sounds that you'll hear from impalas, which is usually 3. If I'm not mistaken, I think I've only heard 3. The one is the alarm call, which is a snorting sort of nasal sound, like that sort of sound. Then the sound of a rutting male impala, which is more of like a kind of a more sort of rude sounding sound, as they chase and urge the females. Let's just see if they've seen where he's moved to. Okay. I think, just looking at where everyone on the other vehicle's looking, I think he's somewhere right in front of us. I'm just going to move a little bit forward here. And then we might be able to see him walk down past us through the drainage line. There we go. Okay. Great. There he is. So he is still looking straight towards those impalas, which he did see, judging by his behavior. And I can see them as well still, actually. I don't know if you'll get him there, Senzo. It might be a little bit too high for you through the leaves, but he's actually in a great position here. But let's just see what happens. He's probably, if I had to guess, he's probably about 30 meters off from the impalas, which is a pretty good distance. And unlike the sighting earlier with the kudu and Hosana there, the distance between him is covered with timbuti trees and shade. The wind is in his favor and the sun is behind him. So let's hope our boy gets to replace his meal from last night. Quite happy with our position as well here, because we are off to the side, so we're not parked behind him, which wouldn't draw any attention in the direction of where he's sitting. And he is just watching very intently. Absolutely, Daniel, this is the perfect kind of cover, if you want to put it that way, for a leopard to blend in. Look at that golden color of his coat, the golden color of the sun, and the reddish brown color of the leaves at the moment. It is absolutely perfect. They almost become invisible in this kind of environment. You can see how he's just sitting very still and listening. I think what he's thinking about at the moment is how many impalas are here. I can see from where I'm sitting, I can see 2. They both seem to be young males. 3. There's 3, and they're all 2-year-old male impalas. At least 3, there might be more. Obviously, the more impalas there are, the more difficult it becomes for him to sneak up to them undetected. More sets of eyes, more sets of ears to pick up on his movements. I wonder what he would do here. I'm just trying to think. It's quite difficult usually to think like a leopard, but stay undetected is his number one priority. But in terms of his approach, if he moves a little bit towards us, he's going to be in the sun, which he wouldn't do because it would cast a shadow in the direction of the impalas. But while I'm trying to still figure out how a leopard thinks, I'll send you back to Jamie, who is doing something with giraffes. I'm not sure, but let's go and have a look.
Well, I suppose Seb's quite tall, especially with the antenna. I mean, I'm a lot of things, but tall, he's definitely not one of them. I'm very accepting of the size that I am. Skinny, maybe, perhaps, might be a good description. And, of course, with 2 left feet. So, yes, actually, I get it. I get where he was going now, or if it didn't before, I've made it work. Right, we did find something really beautiful. One of those funny little jewels of the bush that, so often is missed when you're driving along. That's why being out on walk is so special. This particular egg probably belonged to an arrow-marked babbler. If not an arrow-marked babbler, perhaps a starling. And obviously what's immediately striking is that blue color. I'm trying to think of a better word than blue. I mean, I'm a girl. I should know different names for colors. Best suggestion for the color of this egg? Hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or in, comments section of the YouTube chat. Emma says turquoise or aqua. I would have gone with cyan. It's not really
like
teal.
turquoise.
Okay, Seb says turquoise. Can I tell you what else it is? Really smelly. Really stinky. And for some reason, I said to Seb as I picked it up, Emma says duck egg blue. For some reason, I said to Seb, it's really disgusting. So he picked it up and smelt it. Put it right up to his nose. And I don't know how he didn't vomit. He's still going, "Bleh." I mean, it's a rotten egg. That's what it stinks of, because there's all the remaining albumin from where the chick, the albumin, of course, is for the chick's food supply. No, you can't say that, Emma. It stinks. I can smell it from here. It is really, really stinky, and I think I've got the cold that's been going around the camp. Ooh, I like that. Sharon says sea foam. That's very pretty. Okay, let's expand this. Doesn't have to be one word. It can be an expression. Ooh. Tabby says Tiffany blue. The same blue as the sky on a winter's morning. No. You know what? The blue of the sky on a winter's morning in a European country. Because our sky doesn't go that color blue. Not really. Not often. But in a European country, I think that could work. Winter sky, pale, pale. The color of somebody very cute's eye, says Emma. Okay, well, we know what Emma's type is. Or at least what eye color they go with. That she would go for. Emma, aren't your eyes this color? No, Emma's eyes are brown.
This is his eyes.
Oh. Yeah, your eyes are brown. Sorry, Ems, yours are brown. Oh, I still think your eyes are nice. Chris says greenish blue. Yes, okay, fair. Seb's saying the color of Casey's eyes, which is very sweet. That's his daughter, for those of you that don't know. She's 6.
Yep.
She's 6 years old,
Natural.
which is really sweet. But much less smelly, or at least Casey's much less smelly. That could have gone both ways. Wasn't even listening as I said that to who I'm sending you across to, so it can be a surprise for you, for me, and possibly for Seb.
On the move, indeed, but very, very, very gently. I feel like he has literally gone as flat as a rug. And he is slowly sneaking towards the impalas. Now, the reason he's done that is because as this impala was feeding, it moved slightly towards him and behind a clump of grass and fallen branches, which offered him the cover necessary to move. So there's 4 impalas there now. They're angling a little bit away from him. Let's just see. Still just edging. The accuracy of his movements is phenomenal. He watches very carefully each impala simultaneously and makes sure that none of them are looking in his direction. And then he makes a move. If you can see there, it's very difficult to see him in that grass, but the distance between them and between the impalas and the leopard is a little bit more apparent there. If I had to give you a guess, he's probably about 10 to 12 meters off. And the good thing is that these impalas are actually quite busy feeding and moving about, so they're quite occupied in themselves and what they're doing at the moment, and they're in a very precarious type of habitat to be behaving so casually. And Hosanna was in the right place. Oh, he is just absolutely frozen because one of the impalas just lifted its head up. Eunice, that is a great comment. Crouching leopard, chewing impala. It's exactly what we're watching here. No hidden dragon. But the intensity of this scenario definitely trumps all others at the moment. Now that impala very nearly caught him out there, and even at this point it's still very much touch and go. He would, just watching those impalas, he would very much appreciate one of those impalas to move towards him, which would be the most ideal in this situation. And let's see, they haven't actually chosen any particular direction. Like I say, they're just winding in and out of all those bushes. Busy feeding on, I think they're eating tumbuitis there. Now, some spike thorn, some small tumbuitis. He is absolutely silent up. There is, at least audible to us, there is absolutely no sound of his movement. And if you compare that to the gentle sounds, even of the very delicate hooves of the impalas, you can hear them quite clearly on the dry leaves as they're moving in and out of the thicket. But somehow he manages to either place his feet just in between the patches of dry leaves as he moves, or the very soft and furry nature of the bottom of his pads, they're very furry between the toes, does help to muffle his footfalls as well. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to control my excitement here as well, but the situation with these impalas, like I mentioned, they're all males, which kind of helps in the way that they'll sometimes jostle between. It's very difficult to control your excitement when it gets this close. But yes, the males between themselves will sometimes push and shove and jostle, and every now and then one of them sort of jumps in the direction of Hosanna, which could change things. For Hosanna, for the better. For the impala, unfortunately not so good, but we all know that that is part of life out here. So, I think he's also still recovering from his last move where he very nearly got caught out. And he has stayed in the exact same position. Impalas have moved slightly in towards the back now, so he's just lifting his nose to try and keep a good view of them. Let's just see what happens here. Give it a few more seconds. These things can take 5 minutes, they can take an hour, so we'll have to just wait and see what transpires. And something as simple as one of those impalas jumping off in his direction could change things. Just watching those impalas all nibbling. I was going to mention earlier about their diet and the fact that they might be nibbling on some tumbuiti leaves. Tumbuiti is a fairly toxic tree as well, and it's not dangerous for the impalas, but might have an impact on their awareness. Some viewers are wondering if there's any baby impalas around. Not at this time of the year. The rutting season has pretty much just ended, as Pat mentioned earlier, so most of the adult females will be pregnant from now going forwards towards November, December, when they will usually give birth at roughly the same time as one another. And then there will be lots of babies around. These ones are babies from 2 years ago, so they're not complete adults yet, but you can see their horns are sort of diamond shapes where the points are pointing in towards each other. And that will put them at roughly 2 years old for a male impala. But it seems to be just a small bachelor group of males. Gator, I don't think that Hosanna has too much to be unconfident about at this stage. He is quite a big male already. He's not fully grown, but in the region of around about 3 years, he should have a pretty good idea of the techniques involved with hunting. And just sitting here watching his behavior, he's doing everything by the book. And so at this stage, I would say his confidence is pretty good. Last night he did manage to get something. Unfortunately, the lions got the better of him, but his confidence didn't have much to do with that. Sorry, he's just moving there again. But yeah, the length of time that this takes very much depends on the situation, the wind, especially the movement and behavior of the impalas. So it's actually showing more confidence and more experience that he hasn't just rushed in and given it a try, which sometimes younger leopards would tend to do. They get too over-eager and sometimes put a foot wrong, and then it gives them away completely. So the impalas have just now turned and faced at an angle away from him, so he is trying ever so carefully to sneak forward. It's almost like a snake. His belly is so low to the ground there. Oh, I'm shaking in my seat with the anticipation. I don't know, you never kind of get over it. If you do, then I think the bush is not a place for you to spend too much time, because this level of intensity gets my palms all sweaty and makes my voice a little bit jittery. And I'm sure most of you have heard the term leopard crawl, and maybe you've even tried to impersonate it. But if you watch a leopard do it, it is such a good example of what that term actually means. Luana, this kill is important for his survival, although it wouldn't make or break it. He would absolutely love a meal now, of course, especially after last night's transpirations. He would definitely appreciate it, but they can go for quite an extended period of time without a meal, although they might be uncomfortable. It would take, it's hard to guess, but I mean, it would take a few weeks at least for that to start wearing down their strength and ability to hunt and look for a meal. But he is still in very good condition, although his belly is a little bit empty. Look at him, completely flat. I think his chin might even be on the ground. I know he's lifted it a little bit. The impalas, usually as the sun starts setting, will start moving out into more open areas to sleep or to rest, at least during the evening and the night time, because they know that animals like Hosanna, look at that. You can almost see his excitement as his legs sort of twitch to try and find a quiet spot to put his paw down. the yoga pose. Oh, there they go. They've seen him. My word, how quickly they disappeared. How many ran off there in that direction? Because he's still looking off to the right there. I don't know if there's... Oh, that was quick. Oh, my goodness. Yes, the stalking leopard yoga pose. I've never tried that one. I would probably pull something. But yes, damn it indeed. Unfortunately, that one didn't pay off, but he gave it a very good go, and I think he did incredibly well in getting as close as he did. And suddenly the tension has been released, but he's not looking too happy with himself. Not that he did anything to mess his attempts up, but obviously one of those sets of 4 eyes caught that movement. I think while I catch my breath and maybe try and stretch and move around a little bit, now that we can do that without affecting Hosana's hunt, I'll send you back to Pat to see what he's up to.
Well, it sounds like you need a nice bit of breath there. I know what that's like to be put on the edge by Hosana, so bad luck for the little chief, but, well, hopefully that isn't discouraging for him and he does continue to try and get himself a feed that he can hang on to and actually eat himself. He wasn't looking, well, he definitely wasn't looking like he had a feed recently when I saw him yesterday. His stomach was looking a bit flat, so I really do hope he can secure himself a meal, but he's got all of our support and I'm sure he will. But just very good to have him back, and very good that he didn't actually get chased off the property by the lions. It seems like it's been quite the opposite actually. The lions have gone off the property and Hosana has stuck around. So I've gone down south at the moment because I haven't been down this way for a little bit. I've kind of been up around the northern side of the property over the last few days or so, and I'm just having a look. It seems like there was a few elephants somewhat recently in the area. There's some tracks around, some dung, some broken down trees. So we're just kind of having a look around for that because I still haven't gotten my herd yet. I've gotten single male elephants on 3 different occasions now, but as for a full herd itself has been something that has eluded me despite the size of those giants. But I hope Grant does stick with Hosana, and I hope that he does go for another hunt. It is something we did see quite a bit a few months ago, was Hosana going for a few hunts in the matter of the space of a drive. So it's not like he will just go for one and then stop. Hopefully he does continue to move about and try and get himself an impala. Definitely his prey of choice, and something that leopards do go for a lot is the impala. It's kind of that perfect size for them. And as for speed, well, as you probably all saw then, they do have to get very, very close to an impala, usually within about 5 meters or so to launch the strike and be able to keep up. Let's have a look here. There's a cool... no, it's going to fly off. Let's see if it lands. Yes, it did. Cool. Thank you. Grey go-away bird. A bird we frequently hear out here in the bushveld. Ian, no, I haven't seen any zebra at all since I have been back. Oh, looks like it's flown off there anyway. I haven't seen any at all, any zebra. I just before saw a giraffe, but it unfortunately, like those lions, crossed into Buffelshoek. So it was already across the northern boundary when we saw it, and then it ran off. Well, not ran off, but it was on quite a bit of a mission. It almost seemed like it suspected something was in the area, perhaps even those lions. It looked a little bit on edge. We didn't really get up close to it, but it was constantly on the move the whole time we were around it. But that was the first giraffe I've also seen since being back in Juma. Of course, a different species. than the ones that I would always see up in the Mara. That was Giraffa tibble-skirchy, or the Maasai giraffe, and down here we get the southern giraffe, Giraffa. Maasai giraffe being quite, well, not quite a bit, but a little bit taller. The tallest species in Africa. Okay, well, I've just done a big loop and haven't been able to pick up on anything else, but let me send you back over to Jamie whilst I try and find something cool to look at.
No luck, I'm afraid. Our big loop was blocked by a hunting hosanna. That's the route that we wanted to go because that's where we think the lions might have gone. But obviously, we're not going to walk straight into the middle of an established leopard sighting while he's hunting impala. That would be really, truly horrible. So we're just strolling, really, and admiring this absolutely iconic-looking marula tree. This time of year, of course, they don't have leaves. They're saving up all of their energy for when summer returns once again and they have to bear fruit. This is just the perfect leopard tree. You really feel as though there should be a leopard spread over the branches. But I've tried to lie in marula trees before, and I have to tell you that it is phenomenally uncomfortable. We see leopards sleeping on the ground so often, and we regularly get asked why they don't sleep more in the trees. They do, but it's really not comfortable. It's actually really, really not comfortable. They make it look comfortable, but I think even for them, it starts to get a bit... I'm trying to think of a synonym for uncomfortable. Can't think of one now. Chris wants to know if I've ever seen a leopard fall out of a tree while sleeping. I haven't, unfortunately. I have heard stories of it happening, though. I've heard stories of leopards stretching and just flopping out of the tree. They're usually quite good at recovering it, though. They usually sort of scrabble their way along. I'm trying to think. We have seen I'm talking nonsense. We've seen hosanna fall out of the trees before, multiple times, but never while he was asleep. It was usually because he was doing something silly while he was growing up, He was jumping from one tree to another and he just sort of tumbled out of it. But I've never seen a leopard sleeping and rolling out of a tree. I think it might be quite entertaining to watch, as long as they didn't hurt themselves. You get it with cats sometimes. I've seen my cat fall off the couch, stretching and rolling over in the sun, and just so overjoyed that she was experiencing this nap time, and she just stretched, roll over, and fall off the couch. And like any cat, leopards would be able to land on their feet. Somebody had a merry time here. I'm going to go with honey badger. That would be my guess. Something very fluffy. Speaking of fluffy things, we're going to send you across to Pat, who has found the fluffiest of all fluffy antelope.
Okay, so I'm just sorry, I just was blocking the road for a vehicle there. It was actually a police vehicle. Hopefully I didn't do anything wrong. So I'm just going to go back. Now we are here with some waterbuck and some impala, actually. But the waterbuck here is the main focus. This one here being a female, obviously distinct by the lack of horns. And, well, I was speaking before about how we have a different species of giraffe up in the Mara than what we have down here. And, well, it's also the same, well, not species, sorry, a different subspecies. So the subspecies we had up in the Mara is the Defusser waterbuck. And they had this ring we see on the bum here is actually absent in the Mara, in the Defusser waterbuck, but these ones here, it is obviously present, and it serves the function as a bit of a follow me. It helps to guide other waterbuck through this dense kind of bush that they are so frequently found in. Now, Conrad, our tech guy, I'm not going to disclose why, but he has earned himself the nickname Waterbuck, Waterbucky. And, well, yeah, as I said, the story you might have to get from him yourself. Anyway, I just thought I'd stop and we can have a quick look at them, as they did link so nicely with the giraffe. sure a few of you would be aware of the hunt last week with the waterbuck and the wild dogs. Very cool stuff for Rusty to have seen before he left. And, well, I think that's the first ever time I have seen or heard of a waterbuck being hunted by carnivores. They're definitely not the preferred prey of animals. And, well, I've heard, I'm not sure if there's any truth behind this, but I've heard it's because there is a bit of a secretion in their meat and also on their fur that is quite repulsive to other animals. But obviously didn't bother these wild dogs in the slightest. They absolutely devoured that thing. So at the moment, I couldn't really pick back up on anything of the elephants. I couldn't hear or anything. But, well, Hosanna, as I was saying, does prefer an Impala. I don't know whether he would go for a waterbuck, but let's go and catch up with the Little Chief and Grant.
Pat, I do think Hosanna would take quite kindly to a waterbuck meal at this stage, even with the annoying oil that they have in their skin, because of all the hard work that he just put into this hunt. Did not provide him with any reward, unfortunately. But anyways, he doesn't let that get to him. He will carry on with the resilience that only a leopard has when it comes to hunting. And he has just moved further up the edge of this drainage line. We can't actually see him at the moment. So there are some other guys trying to have a look on the other side, but I think we might have to just loop around here to try and see if we can find him again. Yeah, shame. Hard work for our friend here, but that's usually the kind of work that pays off. Come on, Wendy, let's get up here. Excellent. Yeah, and so he will keep trying. The direction that he moved out of this drainage line, I heard a male impala sort of rutting, that rutting sound that they make. I know we were talking about the Impala Sounds earlier, and I'm pretty sure that he heard the same sound that I heard and may have moved up in that direction to go and have a look and see what they're up to. I'll just try and finish off on that story from earlier about the Impala Sounds being 3 altogether. The one snorting sound, the 3 sounds being the snort is the alarm call, the rutting sort of gargling sound that we've just heard, and then the sound that the calves or lambs, that the Impala lambs make when they're very young, like a yip, 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 sort of a contact call, very gentle kind of grunting sound that they'll make between them and their mothers. There was a question about how many stalks end in a kill, and that actually varies quite a bit from predator to predator. So Jess, that was a pretty good question. In terms of percentage, when it comes to leopards, they are probably successful around, surprisingly, only about 30 or 40% of the time, which isn't very much. Obviously it varies from situation to situation, different habitat, wind, and all the sort of factors that we were talking about earlier that I'm sure Hosanna was thinking about. Now, the most successful predators in terms of hunt to kill ratio would be the African wild or painted dog, as they're more accurately known. And they usually get into the region of about 70% success rate. And that probably has a lot to do with the fact that they hunt as a group, whereas leopards all the time would be hunting on their own. So that puts them in a completely different kind of environment when they're hunting. They can't rely on anybody else to help them. So yeah, their percentage does drop quite a bit. Lions also sort of in the region of about 40% or so. Alright, so I think he may have come up in this direction. We were parked, just trying to look for a mark here with these trees that we were looking at, but I think he was somewhere down here from where we were sitting. And I don't think he would come right out into the open. But let's just... because he was heading in the opposite direction to what I'm facing now, so... Oh, there he is. So he's about 1 o'clock now, moving over to the right, just in front of us there. That was a lucky spot. He just moved through a little gap as I looked in that direction. So let me just go back towards this other open patch here, and we'll try and see if we can get a few glimpses of him moving through this vegetation on the edge of the drainage line here. B. Tingana. Let me try and... I don't know actually when last Tingana was seen, unfortunately, and I haven't been lucky enough to see Tingana yet. So I know that Hosana's only been back in the area for about 3 days or so now. Look at that tail, as we mentioned earlier. Okay, Tuesday, I believe he was seen on drive last week. Tuesday. I don't even know what day it is today. What are we, Monday? Tuesday? So about a week ago, when Tingana was seen. So whether he's in the area or not, I don't know. But he, Hosana seems to be quite calm at the moment. So there's not too much competition around for him, at least for now. Sorry, I believe it's Sunday. Excuse my ignorance of the days of the week, but that tends to happen quite easily out here, where the days don't really change very much, although every day is different. Sunrise and sunset and good times in between. I see him just over to the left. I think he's actually going to cross the road here just in front of us. Try and not let myself get in the way. I know you can't see him just yet, but he was looking across the road, and I'm almost certain that he was looking for those impalas. Let's move a little bit forward here. Oh, here he comes. There he is. Very nice. Look at that light on him. Oh, I don't know if you can hear the francolins. Hopefully you can. Francolins are chirping away. That's their alarm call. They've seen a leopard. It's a good sound to remember, that sort of chirping of the francolins. It'll often point you in the direction of something like a leopard or another predator. Just going to update everybody else who is understandably trying to keep up with Hosana, because he's quite a character. Stations Hosana has just crossed south over Twin Dams Road, sort of heading in a southeasterly direction, quickly to my 3 o'clock. All right, while we try and keep up with Hosana as he meanders through the bushes here, hopefully he comes across some more impalas, and we'll send you across to catch up with Jamie.
I was thinking the same thing, about Tingana. I was wondering where it is that he's gone. Apparently there were tracks around Buffelshoek Cutline this morning. It's interesting, isn't it, that his arrival of his son, he hasn't moved off. He's probably just doing his regular territorial route, I suppose. But it'd be interesting to see what happens. I think that initial interaction was based purely on, another leopard, another male. And Hosana ran and Tingana came in, and it just was a bit confused. I don't think he knew which leopard it was. I think he just responded, and Hosana, having spent so much time seeing other male leopards that didn't welcome him, ran away. So I don't know where Tingana's gone. What I do know is this was once upon a time a very tall tree, and I was about to sit on it until I realized it is almost It's actually not completely hollow. I would have been surprised if it were completely hollow, but the bark, or at least the cambium layer, has now fallen away, and a lot of it's split off from the heartwood. And this was a knobthorn once upon a time, and it must have been, I mean, if I come down towards the roots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, not the most accurate, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10-ish. I mean, some of the branches are broken off, 10-ish meters in height. And what's fascinating, I always find about that, and this isn't the best example because it's quite an old tree, but how shallow the root systems are of knobthorns. It's one of the reasons why they say you shouldn't put your camp up underneath a knobthorn tree, especially during storm season, because they often blow over. They have very, very shallow root systems. Most of the roots have rotted away, but you can sort of get an idea. This root extended to about here. That's about 3 meters worth of long root, maybe 3 meters on that one as well. I need to sneeze, I'm sorry. It's going to come and go. It's a lot to support the weight of a 10-meter tree. And the thing about knobthorn is that the wood is incredibly thick. Not incredibly thick, incredibly dense. So like leadwood, very, very heavy, very solid tree. And for a big old tree like this, if you were to get a square meter of this heartwood, you'd probably be looking at around about 800 kilograms for 1 cubic meter of solid wood. That's a lot. That's nearly as much as a leadwood, which is about a ton per cubic meter, which is why, of course, leadwood sinks. Something that shocked the people who tried to use them as railway sleepers, because they chopped down the poor leadwoods, chucked them into the river, and they all went bloop, and sank, because it's such solid wood. But knobthorn is too, makes it very good firewood. It's also more suitable than leadwood because, of course, they're not endangered, so you're not going to get into trouble if you were to cut one down, where leadwood you cannot. You also cannot cut up big fallen dead leadwood either, because it forms such an important part of the ecosystem, and it survives for hundreds of years even when it's dead. Emma says it makes a good balancing beam. It does, although of course not many gymnasts have to face the reality of a potential spitting cobra coming out of the woodwork. Ha! But yes, it does. I just find it fascinating to think that it's supported by such a shallow root system. Yes, a whole new level to the gymnastics for the Olympics. You know, the balancing beam with a spitting cobra that pops out at random intervals. Be a little bit unfair, although you might make the jumps much higher. Barbara wants to know how they survive droughts with such shallow roots. It's an interesting one. They can also grow in places where the soil is very, very dry. Sorry, I still need to sneeze quite desperately. I blame Ali. She brought back a cold. Poor thing. They can, I guess that they get sufficient water. Clearly they do, because they grow. What's interesting about them is that they're nitrogen fixers, which means that they have a symbiotic relationship with bacteria that allows them to get hold of nitrogen. Now, nitrogen as an element is obviously extremely common in the atmosphere, so 70+% of our atmosphere, but at the same time, it is a very stable compound, a very stable molecule. So the bonds formed between two nitrogen atoms are very, very strong, which makes getting nitrogen into any living organism, and it's an essential part of a living organism, is a difficult one. And going from certain nitrates and nitrites and getting it into a soluble form, so something that can dissolve in water that's hydrophilic, is a tricky thing. And things like knobthorns and other acacias, they're not called acacias anymore, but you know what I mean, are nitrogen fixers, which means they have these incredible systems within their roots. That's got absolutely nothing to do with water, but that's because the truth is I don't know how they manage to get their water with such shallow root systems. They obviously manage. It's just interesting that they grow in the places that they grow, where a marula tree cannot fix nitrogen, but it does have relatively deep roots. All right, I'm in desperate need of a sneeze, so while I attempt to do so, let's head across to Hosanna and see whether or not he's got any dust up his nose.
All right, thanks, Jamie. We are busy following Hosanna at the moment. He's directly in front of me at the moment. I'm just going to switch off and watch him walk past in front. He's kind of moving up in a, what are we now, sort of southwesterly direction, and stopping every now and then and listening and looking around for those rutting impalas. Now, the fact that he went straight from one unsuccessful hunt and into another means that he is quite keen. And if you look just in front of his back legs there at his belly, you'll see that it's quite narrow. You'll see when a leopard has had a big meal, it'll be kind of ballooned out quite noticeably when he's filled himself up. But at the moment, he's very intent on trying to find another meal. Now, we don't want to lose visual of him for too long, because knowing how good they are at disappearing, they'll give us the slip very, very quickly. So let's just loop through here. You see how he's gone into some thick grass? All right, I see him on the other side there. That's good. I just want to be quite careful about what I'm driving over here. And, oh, look at that termite mound there. Look at his tail. He's hopefully going to go and lie up on top of that termite mound. Now, I know some of you are wondering if I have a favorite leopard sighting. That is, I'm probably in a very fortunate position to have to sift through quite a number of sightings. Yeah, let's try to get ourselves into a nice position here, because this will turn into another nice sighting. Let me think now. So I've only ever actually been lucky enough to see one full leopard hunt, which ended in a kill, and that was with a female leopard down in the south, known as Hlabankunzi. I'm just going to stop here. I don't know what's on the other side of this termite mound, so I just want him to have a look around and then see what he decides to do. Good, he's laid down. Cool, let's start up and go around so we've got a little bit of better light on his face there, and it looks like this is how we are going to enjoy our sunset this afternoon. Spectacular. Sure, other leopard sightings that would stand out as favorites, it would be the very fortunate position I was in, also even longer back than the Hlabankunzi sighting, but with a female leopard down in the east or southeast of the Maasai Sands. Was a female leopard known as the Yakkelsdry female, and she, at the time that I worked there, which wasn't a very long time, had a cub who, when I arrived, was 4 months old. And during the time that I was there, I got to watch her raise this cub, who had the most wonderful character, was very playful, and took every opportunity to learn from his very experienced mother. So not one particular sighting, but many, courtesy of the Yakkelsdry female. And just look at that. Now you can probably understand why. It's quite hard to decide on my favorite leopard sighting. You can see that double collar that I was talking about earlier, or double necklace that he's got there. Absolutely gorgeous. They just look so regal when they're perched up on top of a termite mound like that. I wonder if they share the same appreciation for a sunset as we do. He would be in a perfect position to enjoy it from where he is there. as the sun sets west of us behind some marilla trees that have lost their leaves already. The classic winter sunset down in the low veld. Now this termite mound would also provide him with a very good vantage point to look out for threats, which would probably be less prolific at the moment than hunting opportunities, but it's a good spot to look out for both of those. And although he is right up and quite obvious at the moment, his camouflage does still help blend him into the grass, especially if you're not particularly looking for a leopard. You might just miss him. It has become a habit of mine to continuously check on the top of any large termite mounds that I'm driving past, because it is a brilliant place to see a leopard. So it's not always very common, but usually very hopeful that it actually does happen. And Hosanna's playing the game nicely today. Look at those eyes. Yeah. It's beautiful. Everybody is quite fond of his pink nose. I did have a closer look at it earlier. I wonder if Senzo can zoom in there. They might be able to see the few scratches that he is starting to pick up. It doesn't make him any less beautiful, just signs that his experience is growing in life. Now, if you do a bit of reading, you might find that some descriptions of leopard's appearance might indicate that, or say that a pink nose indicates that it's a younger leopard, and that it usually blackens with age, but some leopards don't at all. And you might see that around the edges of his nose it has blackened a little bit, but I think and hope that he will keep that beautiful pink nose of his. Just looking at the reflections in his eyes at the moment as well, and one or two flies that are buzzing around on his head. Yeah, this is amazing indeed. And it's almost as if those swaying grass stalks sort of add to the beautiful atmosphere of such a regal creature. Look at those ears. Well done indeed, Senzo. Senzo and Hosanna working as a solid team to deliver some excellent visuals for everybody this afternoon. And I get to sit and enjoy it with you all, which is very, very lucky and much appreciated indeed. Cool. So while we sit back and relax with Hosanna and enjoy the sunset, we'll send you back to continue your search with Pat.
Yeah, still very much looking around at the moment. So I did abandon my search for the elephants, and well, I was down around none of the more southern waterholes, and I did see tracks for what looked to be a large male leopard. I could really only put it down to perhaps Tingana. And then there was also tiny little leopard tracks around just north of where we were, which kind of looked a lot like Tlalamba. So the two must have been in this area at some stage. So I'm just kind of looking around. It looked like both tracks, one was going kind of into the Moati and one was coming out of the Moati, which is a dry riverbed that kind of runs through almost south to north in the property. And well, I've come a little bit far out from there now. As I said, there were tracks coming out, and this is the direction they were heading. They were Tlalambas, or who I think is Tlalamba. It looked like a very small female leopard. And since then, haven't really come back up on anything. So I think what I'm going to do is double back and actually head down. I did do the last southern portion of the Moati. I went down into the river. Oh wow, Hukamori hasn't been seen for quite a while now. It's been, if I had to guess, perhaps 2 weeks. Yeah. So, as for where he has actually gone, I'm not sure. And it would be interesting to see him, or, hang on, let's just look at this sunset for a second. This is insane. So he was, it would have been interesting if he was around though, to see how he responded to Hasana coming back. But since the little chief has been back, Hukamori has not been seen. So I'm not exactly sure which property he crossed, which direction he went in, but yeah. He's kind of someone who does come and go quite a bit. But how good is this? So the way the sun is sitting behind the clouds right now, we can see that it's almost hard to look at the clouds the way it's reflecting the sunlight. It's very, very, very golden. And wow, as that sun starts to descend, it's going to get a lot cooler out here, seeing as we are in the winter months. And well, I think what I'm going to do is have a bit more of a search around the Moati, see if I can pick up on Tingana or Talalamba, and then I reckon the go will be to head to the hyena den. So on we move. I'm just hearing on the Game Drive radio that there is a 3-year-old tawny eagle up at Bull's Hook, but it's just a bit far away for us to traverse up that way. So with that in mind, let's send you back over to Grant and Hosanna to see what the little chief is up to now.
Hosanna is indeed still perched up in the termite mound, enjoying the sunset and listening very intently to what's going on around him. If you watch his ears, you'll see him swing them backwards and forwards as he looks around in all different directions. I'm sure he's got a nice 360-degree view from up there. You just watch his nose every now and then. He might lift his snout into the air and pick up on any smells that might be drifting in on this easterly breeze that we're enjoying. And similar to yesterday evening, he looks behind him there. Similar to yesterday evening when everything starts quietening down, you hear all those very gentle sounds that are starting to develop as the evening goes on. He's sitting on his elbow there. You get a little bit of a background there behind him as well. A few clouds in the sky, but nothing too bad. I just want to keep looking at him with the binoculars. You see, I've never spent this much time with Hosanna, and it's nice to get to know all of his little markings, the spot patterns that make up his unique identity that he will keep for life. And that's one of the nice things about the fact that leopards never change their spots, which is absolutely true. And I think many viewers probably do know what Hosanna's spot pattern is and what exactly a spot pattern is. But if you did have a look at him, you'll see that on each side of his snout, on the top line of his whiskers, he's got some spots that are unique to him. And on Hosanna's cheeks, he's got 3 on his right and 3 on his left. So I would say that his spot pattern is 3-3. So whenever you get that sort of first glance of a leopard and not too sure who he is or she is, it's a good idea to just lift your binos and have a look at those spots on his face. That will usually give them away. I was looking at photos of, who was it? I think it was Tlalamba this morning, and also just trying to identify her. And it is quite apparent when you have spent a bit of time with leopards how unique each of them are. Part of their ID also goes along with the area that you find them in, as leopards are very, very territorial, and females occupying a particularly small area. And so other signs, yes, other signs that you could use to identify a leopard. I was just mentioning the territories. So that is one thing that you can use for sure, because that changes sort of over a leopard's lifetime, but over a long period of time, during their lives, it's usually quite solid. So a male leopard would have a fairly large territory and a female a slightly smaller territory. It looks like he's going to spend a little bit more time on top of the termite mound. Gives me a good chance to explain. So yes, territory, so the area you find them in would usually give them away as well. And then other markings or physical signs on their bodies. So Hosana's pink nose would be one. So the pink nose associated with the 3-3 spot pattern would give him away. And as he gets older, he will pick up a few more scars and things from fights or territorial confrontations that he might have with other leopards or hyenas or lions. Hopefully not too much of that. And if you look at the shape of the edge of their ears, particularly when he's sitting up looking straight at you and his ears are pricked up, you can see the edge of their ear would also give away part of their ID. If they've got a little bit of a notch or a tear in their earlobe, you can also use that to identify them. I'm sure many of you probably know Ribbon, the hyena, with a very big tear in her left ear. And for those of you who don't, she is a fairly well-known hyena in this area, and one of the ways of identifying her is her big tear in her left ear. Overall appearance in terms of leopards, especially with lions, it does get quite tricky with lions because they don't have unique spot patterns, as they don't have any spots. But their overall appearance, so some lions are slightly darker shade overall on their coat. Male lions, some males might have very big manes, some might have very pale manes or very dark manes. So you just, I think the more time you spend with these animals and the individuals, you kind of forced to look for the how do you call it, the particulars of each individual. I remember there was a leopard, I don't want to get this wrong, but a leopard down in the south who had a kink in his tail, which he obviously picked up in a fight or some sort of confrontation, possibly in a hunt or something, and we used that to identify him. His name eludes me at the moment. It was either the Nyaleti male or the Kashan male. Anyways, I will sit here and ponder that for a while Osana naps on the termite mound, and we'll send you back to Jamie to enjoy the sunset.
Well, animals keep their looks to a certain degree throughout their lives. Each and every single sunset is different. Hey, how tenuous was that connection? It was an effort, though. I made the effort to connect it all up, connect the dots, and it really is a beautiful sunset, my word. It's spectacular. And feels like there's every single color of the spectrum up there, including the blue of that egg that we saw earlier. I feel like that blue's in there somewhere. A little bit of purple, a little bit of pink, a little bit of gold. Oh, it's just getting better. Bird's egg blue. Worth every now and then stopping just to watch the sunset. Although, probably less so on walk when you're not quite close to camp. A lot of you wondering if I sneezed. Apparently quite concerned. You know what's interesting about this is both Seb and I started at almost exactly the same time. He started at the beginning of drive and I started halfway through the walk. So we're a little bit convinced. Tristan sounds as though somebody put gravel rocks in his voice box this morning. His voiceovers for Spy Lives are going to be hilarious because he sounds like this. And he doesn't exactly have a high-pitched voice at the best of times. And Seb and myself live in the same house as the contagious twosome. What would we call them? The contagious couple. The contagious couple. So the spirit is willing, but the body is a bin liner filled with yogurt this afternoon. I really wish that was my line, but it's not. It was Stephen Fry's. But I feel it is a perfectly apt description. Did I sneeze? No. Is my nose running? Yes. Seb too. Dundee's tracks, we think, might be Tlalambas. Walking along down Weaver's Nest Road. And Seb and I have just been having a discussion along with Herbie as to what we do with tracks. It's our new favourite game, Herbie and myself. We have a little competition as to who can step on old tracks first. But we will call these in, I think, because they do look as though they're sort of from at some point this afternoon. So the front foot here, fast, walking really fast. Front foot here, and then the back track here. There's little toesies. So from the same point on each track, it's a distance of about probably close on, what's that, 4 or 5 inches. She's walking fast, missioning, essentially. You find that when the backtrack, and this is not a hill. Sometimes when you're on a downward slope, the backtrack obviously overtakes their front track just because of gravity and pulling their body down. But this is a flat road, so we're going to stomp on them. This is what's... Seb and I were calling this formatting the road, like you format a memory card. And that when the road is graded, it is a factory reset of the whole area. Anyway, that's about as nerdy as Seb and I get. Let's go across to Patrick, who probably doesn't appreciate the fact that we're stepping all over his tracks.
Well, now I'm not looking for tracks. Now I'm listening out for alarm calls. So we heard from Tristan that there are Impala alarm calling not too far from quarantine. And so I've just come up that way to have a look around. Now, both sets of tracks, although they were heading kind of into the river, they were also heading in a northward direction, which is the direction we have come in. And so it could be that a leopard has made its way up from the south. But we'll just have a bit of a... Okay, so I can see some Impala over here. I wonder if these are the ones that we're calling. So there's definitely some Impala around. I haven't heard any noise yet though. Let's just switch off for a second and have a bit of a listen out. So I'll just sit here for a couple of minutes, see if I can hear anything, because sometimes it is a little bit difficult to hear over the sound of the engine and also over the sound of my own voice echoing through the back of my skull. No sounds as of yet. Tristan did say it didn't seem like super serious alarming. It wasn't anything crazy, but definitely worth coming up to have a look anyway. Okay, well, yeah, maybe you're right, Emma. Maybe they were just having a bit of a chat. But whatever it is, it doesn't seem to be occurring anymore. Not to worry. I thought it's always worth following up on alarm calls. Most of the time, I mean, tracks definitely do help, but unless you have had years and years and years of experience, to be able to accurately age a track is a very difficult thing. So they can be good for showing. I tend to use them as a guide for the general area and not specific directions, but sound, on the other hand, alarm calls have been very, very helpful in the past in kind of being a bit more specific in locating where an animal is. Well, even last night with Hosanna, those squirrels, after he gave us the slip, led us directly to him. Joyce, I have seen in Impala alarming at hyenas. I saw it in the Mara, but I have also seen hyenas walk past Impala without an alarm call. But a lot of the time you will hear them alarming because hyenas will hunt Impala. A lot of people think of hyenas only as scavengers, but they do tend to hunt a lot as well. Even in the Mara, I saw them attempting some zebra. Well, it wasn't really attempting, they were just kind of fishing. They were chasing these zebras, but not really giving proper chases, just to see if any sick or wounded or young or slow were in the pack, or the herd, sorry. Okay, well, something else that plenty of things alarm at, as I was just saying, is Hosanna. Let's go back to the little chief, who is still very relaxed on a termite mound.
Quiet indeed, Pat. Hosanna is appreciating the silence, I'm sure, after chasing those impalas off. Although the ones that... Let's see what he's doing. The ones that he was listening for have gone quiet as well. Now he's just sat up again, just as you guys came back to me, which is good timing. And he's looking off. Either he's gazing at the beautiful sunset, or he's actually heard something. I didn't hear anything, but he's definitely heard something in the distance there. If he had seen something, he might have popped his head up and opened his eyes a little bit wider. So these little sort of behavioral clues will sometimes give away what he's thinking. I think he's just scanning around, trying to pick up on any information that might lead to his next hunt. I was thinking a little bit earlier on that he might be waiting for it to get dark before he starts to try and hunt again. Now, Hardy, I do think he will eventually head back towards the Juma camp. He tends to go on these sort of short forays and then works his way back towards probably where he feels safe around camp. And after an encounter like last night, maybe he's still a little bit shaken, but still quite determined to look for a meal. So I'm hoping that he does come back. It does make it quite a bit easier to find him if he does decide to do that. But while we've been following him this afternoon, he's just given us a cold shoulder. While we've been following him this afternoon, he has been walking away from the Vuyatela Dam and Dam Cam. Sorry, I'm just going to try and move here. Don't want to shake around too much. There we go. So he's obviously just switched back to listen back down towards the drainage line where he came from. Just see if anything presents itself in that direction. Nice clouds developing down there as well, giving us a nice sort of painted sky to look at. And as you'll see behind him, the sky starting to darken. As the sun dips below the horizon on the one side, it casts a shadow up into the sky on the other side, which you can sit here and watch as it grows and grows. It is gorgeous. And this is going more into the time of night, when leopards do prefer to move around and doing their hunting. So the hunt earlier on, I think he just stumbled upon those impalas, and they're very opportunistic in that way, where they will try and take advantage of whatever opportunity that they come across. But in terms of conditions, they will definitely try and use the darkness to their advantage. Their eyesight is incredible in the dark, much, much better than ours, and slightly better than the antelope and other species. And I think our star does have a loose schedule. He definitely doesn't chase his watch as much as what we have to, but it is a very loose schedule. I suppose what matters to him is his safety, eventually reproducing, and along the way trying to find a meal. So wherever and whenever those opportunities arise, they will try and take advantage of it. Orange, how long he'll last without a meal? If you mean how long he'll survive by the word last, it's hard to say. I mean, I've watched leopards without getting a major meal, so a meal that would fill them up for periods of probably 2 weeks. And that's just my experience of what I've seen. It could probably go, if I had to guess, a bit longer than that, maybe 3 weeks, before they really start losing condition and energy. But yeah, I would guess sort of 2 weeks. Ideally, they would kill something every 3 or 4 days, depending how big their last meal was. And in those situations where I've watched leopards for 2 weeks or so without any major meal, they might also take smaller things in between. So leopards are incredibly versatile with their sort of menus, and they'll take anything from beetles up to small rodents or birds, and anything up to the size of buffalo calves and things of that nature. So they're very, very versatile, and for that reason can usually survive in a vast range of habitats, and even in areas that are very, very close to human habitats. Yeah, cool. So I think in the meantime, while we sit here and see if he's going to make any moves, we'll send you back to Jamie, who I believe is also quite versatile in her tracking abilities.
I do like Hassan. I don't know how versatile I am, but I can squash line tracks. That one too. And that one. And I saw one here too. That one? No, that's Herbie's track. There. That one. And that one. Because everything looks so fresh at this time of year that we are... Ow! Let me get my shoe. Ow! Thorn in my shoe. Hang on. Okay, I think I got it. Sorry, straight in the arch. No, I haven't got it. Just in my shoe.
What is it, a stone?
No, it's a little spiky thing. I mean, it's probably a grass seed. It's my fault for forgetting the gators. There we go. I really am genuinely doing this for a specific purpose, and that's because everything looks so fresh at this time of year, and the soil is so dry that it's worth just marking out what's old and what's new, so that we don't have any mistakes. Speaking of which, the lions, 2 lionesses went south again, which is what we thought. We finally found their tracks on Weaver's Nest. I suspect now long gone. We also just bumped into one of the Juma clan members. Unfortunately, a little bit too far away for me to figure out who it was. But she ran, or he, ran across down here. And hyenas don't really like seeing people on foot. You can habituate them, but because of their intelligence levels, it's probably better that we don't. Because they end up, it's one thing having an animal that interacts regularly with a human camp. They often come into our camp, and they often come looking for any scraps, because human beings leave scraps. It's just one of those things. No matter how cautious you are, they often find themselves getting lucky with the dustbin, the rubbish bin, if it hasn't been put inside. Now, if you habituate them to people on foot, then they become dangerous. What do you hear, Herbs? Lions. I can't hear anything. It's probably because my ears aren't working. Nothing. Herbie says he heard a lion. I believe him. I didn't, though. And we're marching now back towards camp as it gets dark. Obviously, the sun's gone down, and at this time of year, it gets dark very quickly. I'm hoping that those 3 elephant bulls that we saw this morning, I was with Michelle, and then, of course, Steve and Herbie saw them on foot again a bit later. I'm hoping that they might come down towards the dam for a quick drink. It's possible. Oh, Herbie, you got these tracks already. And leopard tracks, Tandy tracks. It's a fun game. I think Herbie's winning, though. He was up ahead of me. But we're hoping that those elephant bulls might come down to have a drink, because there's not much water elsewhere. So, while we very lethargically have a competition to see who can squash the most tracks, Osana is out and about on Djuma, making more.
Oh, energetic. I don't know. At the moment he looks keen, but definitely taking it easy. I believe Jamie was discussing habituating hyenas with everybody, and although, yeah, it can sometimes be dangerous. Excuse me. Oh, what are we doing? Just turning. Oh, he's coming towards us. Habituating leopards, I suppose that could be similar in some ways, where, I mean, we would call Hosana perfectly habituated. If you look how close he just walked right past us. So this can provide incredibly good sightings like that, and it's always such a good feeling when they just take no notice of you, and it also allows us to watch them as they would be without us even being there, which is ideal. The only thing it can cause sometimes is that they do come to a little bit too close to you, which if you react in the right way is fine, but otherwise that could sometimes put you a little bit too close. Anyways, I don't want to ignore him for too long. Let's just try and turn around. There's a big stump there in front of us. Thank you, Senzo. Second eyes, quite important when trying to navigate through here. Cool. I wonder if he actually did just hear something. Is he trotting, eh? Okay. Let's just try and keep up with him. Apparently he's just picked up his pace a little bit. Now, my main priority here... Oh, that looks like a nasty sickle bush. We can't drive over that. I think it might have something... It could have something to do with the lions. I'll have to watch him a little bit and just try and see if it looks like he's worried about something or if he's interested in something. That's if I do manage to find him again. Did you see where he went, Senzo? Okay, cool. It could, as Herbie mentioned that he had seen the lions, I was watching Osana to see what his reaction was. And he didn't sort of react immediately, but he did sort of glance up in a direction, lifting his ears up. So he may have heard those lions, but if the lions are far enough away, which they were, because I didn't hear anything at all, then he wouldn't react as instantly as what he did now. So I think he may have just reacted to either hearing something that he might be interested in eating or something along those lines. But while I try and catch up with him again, as I have now lost visual of him, I'll send you back to Pat for a short while. We'll see you just now.
Good luck there, Grant. I hope you can catch back up with Hosanna. But as for me, well, I did hang around just a little bit longer to see if there was any alarming or anything of the sort, but unfortunately, nothing more to be heard. So now I'm just sort of heading down around where you would have seen Jamie found Tandi's tracks just before. Well, I heard from Herbie anyway over the radio that Tandi's tracks were down around kind of in the south as well, where I also thought I saw Tingana's tracks and Tlalamba's as well. So I think it makes sense to kind of head back down in that direction and try and use this last bit of golden light to my advantage. Hopefully get some last minute leopard, which would be spectacular. As great as it has been catching up with Hosanna pretty much since he has been here, it has all been about him, which I think is fair enough. We have missed him. We all need our doses of him. But since that little scuffle between him and Tingana, I haven't seen Tingana. And it was also the last time I saw Trilamba. She was, well, the first one in that sighting and didn't seem to be too affected by it all. But having said that, I also didn't see her after the sighting. So I'm not sure whether she got scared off by Hosanna. Ian, can leopards inherit things from their parents? Well, yes, they inherit everything from their parents, just as you and I do. All of their genetics come from the sperm of the father and the egg of the mother. And, well, they get a pretty much 50-50 mix as they get one strand from each animal, from each sex. One strand of DNA, making it 2 in total. And so that splits the genes 50-50. And so they can get half things from their dad and half the things from their mother. So just like in us humans. So this can be personality traits. This can also be physical traits, size, shape, certain maybe mutations perhaps. So for example, just a random example of this may be that one might have been born with 3 toes, say, and then there's always the chance that if that was a genetic thing, that it could be passed on to the next generation. So everything is passed down from the parents to the cubs. And we can see this a little bit between Tandi and Tlalamba. She definitely has that little bit of attitude, Tlalamba. Doesn't seem to be as bad as Tandi, but then having said that, Tandi is also quite an older cat, whereas Tlalamba hasn't had that life experience yet. And, well, to be honest, I haven't seen, well, obviously I've never seen Karula in the flesh, so I'm not sure, but you guys tell me what you think. Does anyone think that there's any resemblance between Hosanna and Karula? Especially those that were watching quite a bit back in the day, or anyone that does know what Karula looks like. I'd like to hear your opinions to see if you think that you do see any similarities. Murray and FC is saying that they both have spots. Well, yes, that definitely is a similarity. But I mean specific traits. That's very clever there, Muzz. Okay, well, I think what I'm going to do now Barbara is saying that all of Karula's offspring seem to have small traits that kind of do resemble her in a way, which does make sense. I mean, it really is just like you may see in someone's son or daughter, you may see that they have their dad's eyes and their mum's mouth. But that's all from the fusion of genetics. Quite an interesting thing to actually read up on and follow. Obviously, it's an integral part of any sort of biological education, and so it was hammered into us during high school and university. Now, I'm taking a different... Well, usually I come out of the hyena then this way, but I'm going in at this time. Well, someone who I'm sure has her own opinions on the similarities between Karula and Hosana is Jamie. So let's go see what her take is on the subject.
I do. I have plenty of opinions, but in terms more specifically of Karula and Hosana, I don't think Hosana looks like Karula, but I do think he looks like Karula's male offspring, if that makes sense. He looks like his brothers. I think he bears a lot of resemblance structurally to a leopard like Quarantine. I didn't really get to see Kunuma all that often. Quarantine's brother, I saw him once or twice and very briefly. But I do think he looks like a little bit like Quarantine. Tandi, on the other hand, looks like Karula. And not only that, Tandi and Shadow were so clearly sisters. I know we've been over this a few times recently. Specifically, it's in my mind because of the Panthera camera trap project and looking at the genetic inheritance of physical traits within leopards. But Tandi and Shadow really, really look similar. In fact, to the point of when I first saw Tandi, I thought it was Shadow because I'd only ever seen Shadow. It was before the time that we used to traverse anywhere down south or to the east. So I'd never seen Tandi before. She'd come in to mate with Tingana. And Shadow I had seen regularly because we used to spend a lot of time on Arathusa and she had Sindida there. So I thought it was Shadow when I first saw her. Whoops, there's a tree there, Seb. It's all right, Seb's still upright. Yeah, you did. You made it through. You won, actually. You showed that tree who was boss. It was dead already. But anyway, there's another one there. There's actually quite a few, but none of them are tall. No, so you'll be okay. I think that Tlalamba doesn't look like Tandi. I don't feel that she does. I feel that Kuchava looks more like Tandi. Looks more like Tandi's daughter. But Tlalamba is a more unique looking leopard. I think she's going to be bigger than her mum. I think she might already be bigger than her mum. Yeah, oh yes, Tlalamba's definitely inherited a little personality from mum. Definitely the strength and the courage. But physically, no, I don't think she looks like her mum. But Kuchava definitely. Kuchava carries that Karula female look really, really clearly. It's obviously getting quite dark, as you might have noticed, so we're strolling along very, very close to camp. Hosana? Funny thing that, I think he looks like Tingana, but we may yet be surprised. I think he's got the same sad look. They both look sad sometimes. Certainly a poser. We're all just discussing how he thought there was an SABC TV show tonight, and he's probably quite upset that he's been overshadowed, so to speak, by the cricket. There's a tree there, Seb. You got it. You made it. Woohoo! All right. We're going to stroll away from the darkness and into the electrical lights. Meantime, Grant has got his electrical light out as well.
Yeah, I doubt Hosana is very big on his cricket anymore. He has definitely been the star of our show up until now. As you see, things have changed quite dramatically since you all left me. Hosana, as he dashed off of that termite mound, in the time that it took me to turn around, he managed to pull one of his leopard tricks, and I don't know which direction he's gone. Now we're just heading north along the road that was on the western side of that block that he was in, just to see if he's crossed over here, although we are coming up towards Quarantine in a fairly open area. So I think I'll do a loop around the block here and see if we can pick up on anything. Now, on my way out, I saw a couple duikers, which I'm sure he will take quite fondly to. He did not seem to be sneaking up on them, so I wonder what else caught his attention, because he did run off with quite a bit of intent, so if we can figure out what it was. Now this is, I think, what he was waiting for while he was sitting on top of that termite mound. While he was sitting on top of that termite mound, I think he might have just been waiting for it to get dark before he moved. And a classic Duma leopard move indeed, everybody. I think leopard move in general, but being in this area, I'm sure you know the Duma leopards quite well, and this is pretty standard leopard behavior. I don't feel too bad that he might be on his own at the moment, although we try and not sort of interfere with his hunting. You know, being a little bit darker and quieter might help him. And now sometimes when leopards do get to the point where they're tired of being followed, as accommodating as they may be, they might sometimes just dash off. Now, I'm not trying to get out of the fact that that I wasn't quick enough in following him, but I think that might be why we can't find him again. And yeah, like I said, I think he was waiting for it to get dark. All right. I think while we try and catch up with him, it sounds like Pat might have something for you. So let's head over to Pat to see what he's up to.
I am in infrared now, which is why the colours are a little bit different than what you would be used to seeing at the moment. Now, I did go through and check a couple of the hyena dens, but unfortunately no luck at the moment. But that's okay. So the reason I went to them, even though I was going to be looking for Tandi, is because where the tracks come out for the hyena den, it's kind of on the road where the tracks for Tandi were found. So I thought I'll just make my way through, see if they are out yet, which they weren't. And now I can still look around for Tandi for another 10 minutes or so, and then I'll go back and see if there is some activity at the den. So kill two birds with one stone. Hopefully we could get both of them. Well, actually, no. If I find Tandi, I think I'll definitely stick with her. But the fact that the tracks did say, well, the person that came across the tracks was Herbie, I definitely trust that they are worth following up, because that man is very, very experienced. I was saying before about how you do need years of experience to really properly be able to track something, and he is a man who has that sort of experience. It's getting quite dark now as we are in infrared, and I've got the spotlight out to help me, but the road is looking quite clear, so if there are any tracks on the road, I think we should still be able to pick up on them with relative ease. Sometimes it can get a little bit more tricky in darkness. Coming down into a drainage line now, so I'll definitely slow down through there. One of the first things we were taught out here is to always have a better look when you are down in a dry riverbed for leopards, as it is quite dense and cool and shaded and covered. Now, everyone's saying that they have missed the hyenas over the last few days. Yes, I mean, it is almost a daily thing that we do go in and check on them, but I guess it hasn't been done recently. And, well, I hope they do come out a little bit later on if we can't find Tandi, because as well, I miss the hyenas. It is such a good way to end the day, because obviously we tend to go look there more in early morning. Kate, I have never seen any of these drainages actually filled with water in my time here at Duma, but when there is rains in the summer, it will be channeled down through it. But I'm just trying to think back in summer, I think there was, even then, I believe the Moati was still quite dry. But it's more the pans and that we'll start to see fill up. But this time of year, Yeah, it's generally always quite dry. And this time of year, we're definitely not going to expect to see that at all because, well, we're just not going to get rain this time of year. Simple as that. Although this morning, it got surprisingly overcast. The sky was almost completely grey at one point this morning. It did almost feel like it was about to rain, but it never actually came. Roy, well, that's actually a really good question. It does seem like this year the fire alert is a little bit higher. So the Maasai Sands region in general is quite a fire-shaped habitat. You know, it is prone to fires, and I was talking to Steph the other day. He was saying the last 4 or 5 years there hasn't been as much grass cover and therefore not as high as a fuel load, and so the risk of fires hasn't been as severe. But even as we can see to my right and my left at the moment, there's quite a lot of tall moribund grass, which is a bit of a fire hazard. And apparently this year it's a lot higher than previous years, so there is a bit more of a risk, which, I mean, it kind of does seem like a terrible thing, but fires, especially in savanna ecosystems, can really shape the ecosystem and do a lot of good despite the initial destruction. So one of those things even being what I was just speaking about with the fuel load. Obviously, once a fire goes through, that is diminished, so it can help to keep it low. There's also a lot of, in fire-prone areas especially, a lot of trees that have adapted so that their seeds kind of release after a fire in seed-resistant pods, or they have other mechanisms to cope with fire. Sometimes they'll have growths under the trees that can kind of, well, more so in grasses, that will kind of regenerate after a fire has come through. So as long as the whole plant itself hasn't been diminished or destroyed, then it can regrow. And it also allows a lot more light and a lot less cover in whatever layer it may be. So if we're speaking, for example, about the grass layer, well, then it clears out all of that space that is needed for light and allows the new, healthier shoots to come through. It's all comes back to succession, really. So after a disturbance such as a fire, you'll get what is called succession. So to Mawson, I believe. Yeah, so there is 4 fire breaks around this property. So one running kind of parallel to each boundary. Now, what's this? This looks like leopard tracks here. Okay, still going down this way. Okay, well, I will continue to follow these tracks around, see what I can pick up on, although I'm at the southern boundary and they were heading south, so not a good sign. But anyway, let's go to Grant, who is trying to get back onto Hosanna's tail.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, still trying to follow indeed. Haven't had any luck yet. I did see some impalas crossing into the block that Hosanna was in. We've just come down to check Chelapan. There's a scrub hare over here, but nothing in the form of a leopard. This is, if anyone was watching last night, this is the corner around which we came and stumbled upon Tlalamba. In fact, that's exactly where I saw her over there, and there's some eyes on the ground, which might be something like a nightjar or something small, but she was in here last night as well. I think I'm just going to head back towards the area where Hosanna came out of the drainage line. And Dawn, I don't know how far Hosana's scent would travel exactly. Speaking of scent, I don't know if anyone's ever actually smelt what leopard scent smells like. It actually smells like buttered popcorn, which is quite delightful, although that is what their urine smells like. But if that sort of scent mark is fresh, then in terms of human ability, we'd probably smell it from a few meters away, but nothing much more than that. When you've got the senses of an impala or something along those lines, they would probably pick up on a leopard scent 20, 30, 40 meters away, maybe, if the wind is strong enough and blowing in that direction. So it very much depends on the wind, I would imagine. But yeah, I have not smelt any popcorn smell yet. And no other sign of him so far. So some viewers are wondering if the scent marking would affect a leopard's hunting ability. Now, they probably, if they were actively hunting, as in stalking or trying to follow up on something, they wouldn't really scent mark at the same time. So they would hunt, and all their focus would be on their quarry, which they would be stalking. In between stalking their prey, I wonder if we should check down there. I think let's go have a look down here again. In terms of stalking their prey, in between actual stalks, they may start scent marking. And sure, if there was something sort of downwind from wherever they scent marked, they would definitely pick up on that easier than if the leopard wasn't scent marking. And that urine is quite a strong smell, one of my favorite smells in the bush. All right. Nancy, I would say that it is popcorn, not microwave popcorn, but popcorn in general. So even if I go to the movies or something when I'm in the city in Johannesburg, the first thing that comes to my mind when I walk past the movie houses is leopard scent. Leopard scent. And if someone's cooking popcorn at home on the stove in some oil, that also triggers that memory for me. So yeah, just general popcorn, as long as it's properly made, but microwave popcorn doesn't have the same smell to me. And it's actually not particularly leopards. It might be slightly different with other smaller cats, like genets. They also have a very sort of buttery, popcorny smell to them, which is quite nice. Sometimes we, living out here, have genets living in our roofs, and and you can smell that when they're quite active. All right. On that note, I think I'll send you back to Pat, who I believe is sniffing and looking around for a leopard himself.
Well, whatever left those tracks has crossed into the southern boundary, so just making my way back up now to the hyena den, and hopefully we have some activity this afternoon. It would have been very cool to have caught up with Tandy, but we will leave that for another time. It's, yeah. The animals have been quite elusive this afternoon. I've kind of been trying a lot tonight, but not really getting too far with things, but that's all right. As I always say, you win some and you lose some, and I've had plenty of luck over this last week. I've actually been having a lot more leopard sightings than I was expecting. It took a while to get going in my first week or so here, But then I had a really lucky run, a really hot streak with the leopards. And well, it's been very good, very, keeps you going. And it also makes these quieter drives, such as this one, just, you know, that little bit more, you can accept it a little bit more. And it's still quite enjoyable just to drive around and, well, see some of the other interesting things other than leopards, like today, the the fish eagle and the Egyptian goose. Emma is just saying that it also gives me the chance to work on my spotlighting skills, which is very true. It is something that can get a little bit tedious at times, is talking and flashlighting and driving at the same time. Something, well, that can always go with a little bit of refinement. I haven't even had a pair of glowing eyes yet. Usually by this time of night there's at least a scrub hare about. Now I need to keep my eyes peeled here for the entrance to the hyena den, because sometimes if you don't pay attention at night time it can pass very quickly. So I will be tending to look a little bit more to this side of me. Actually, the cold is starting to set in, so I am going to put on a jumper, and whilst I jumper up, let's send you back to Grant, who also seems to be working on his spotlighting skills.
Thank you, Pat. Yeah, a bit of practice with the spotlight goes a long way, although I haven't found anything with it just yet. But I believe there's some impalas alarm calling up towards the Djuma Dam Cam, and that was part of our next step in our search for Hosanna. Now, it became a bit of a guessing game as to which direction he may have turned in, and as we were trying to think like a leopard earlier, we've been doing that again, and we were wondering if he carried on sort of heading southwest and maybe doing a little bit of hunting in that area, or if he had looped back and gone back towards the Djuma Dam Cam or Vuyatela Dam. So I think, so I've just dipped my lights because I think there's a vehicle stopped up in front here for a break. I don't want to interfere with that too much. I think we're just going to nip past them here and head straight back up to the dam and see what might have upset those impalas. It's two hopeful outcomes. Either Hosanna has head back to his favorite haunt, or maybe some of the Nkuhuma members have come back to the dam. It might even be one of the female leopards that have been moving around this area in the last couple days. So let's just sneak past here. Evening, everyone, and go and see if we have any luck at the dam. So we're not far away, fortunately, so we should be there in a few seconds. The dam has been a hotspot, a melting pot of activity today and last night. I'm actually quite jealous of those who were watching all the action go down yesterday. And so let's hope that it attracts the same sort of attention as it has been. Just checking tracks along the road as we go. It usually helps to dip the light down at a bit of a lower angle so that the shadows are cast into the track so we can see it, but nothing fresh over here. Some eyes up ahead there, but I think those are more impala. I'm just judging by how they're moving about, and they're usually not as bright as a nocturnal creature's eyes. That is because of the adaptation that nocturnal animals have in order to see better at night. They have, have I forgot the name now, have a sort of a lens at the back of their eye that reflects light back through their retina, which helps them see at night, which usually stands up quite nicely in a spotlight. Right, I'm just going to take a left over here and head back up towards the dam. Okay. Oh, last minute leopard. I think it rolls off the tongue quite nicely, and it's usually a pretty good way to end off an afternoon. Although, I don't know. I think, like Pat was saying, you win some, you learn some, lose some, and I think this afternoon, the amount of quality, real top quality time that we spent with Hosanna may have been all of our luck used up for today, at least, hopefully. But let's just quickly pop around the corner here. You can see up ahead. All right, I think let's head back over to Pat to see how he's doing for the end of the show. And I'm gonna go and have one final look at the dam. If we do find anything, we'll have to check up with us later. So let's pop over to Pat to see what he's got.
Still making my way up to the hyena den. The entrance that we usually use for some reason or another has been blocked off, and so I've got to make my way around a bit. So I'm not exactly sure why, but obviously there is some reason and I want to respect that. And so we will come around the other way and pray that we do have some hyenas coming out to greet us. So just a reminder to everyone that there isn't an SABC show tonight because of the cricket. And so that is why we are treated to a 3-hour drive rather than our usual 2 on Sundays. But we will be back next week. And well, I'm sure it's going to be a very exciting episode. I know we were all very keen for tonight. And everyone's wondering whether a hyena cub, a pesky hyena cub, used bigger sticks to block the den. No, these definitely looks like they were moved by humans. I think they were a bit too large for a hyena to handle, especially a little cub. Although they do love to play around with their sticks. Oh, so we are in a bit of a last minute surprise here. Hopefully we can get some hyenas. Not far from the den. If we do get to see them, it won't be for very long, but better some hyenas than none. Pressing at thumbs. Are they there? Are they there? 1 minute to go. So it seems like there are some gremlins, and if there is any problems with my audio, I do apologise. But it's not the audio I'm worried about right now, it's the visuals. And no hyenas, so we have an empty den, so we'll have to be closing the show with an empty den. I do apologise, but I hope you did enjoy tonight's drive. At least we did catch up with Hosanna. And, well, I think that little bird sighting earlier was quite interesting as well. But as for now, it's time to say goodbye. Thank you all so much for joining. If you would like to join us again, please do in the morning for our AN drive. But as for now, goodbye and good night.